Chosen one, listen carefully. Do you feel that exhaustion that doesn't come from effort alone? That quiet question you never say out loud, wondering if all this resistance was meaningless or if it was secretly shaping you. You didn't imagine that feeling. It was the summons. Because long before you questioned your worth, a court beyond time was convened. Not to test you, not to measure you, but to recognize you. You were called without warning. No trumpet, no spectacle. Just a sudden interruption in your inner world, a pull you couldn't explain, an awareness that something larger had turned its attention toward you. Apprehension rose first. It always does. The weight of the unknown pressed in old narratives, whispering that you didn't belong in rooms like this. And yet, beneath the fear there was calm, a strange familiarity, as if your spirit had been here before your mind caught up. The space itself shimmered with authority, not harsh, ancient, a silence alive with intention. Every step forward felt less like entering a trial and more like returning to a place that had been waiting for you since the beginning. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't fantasy. This was alignment. You weren't dragged into this moment. You were summoned because your story reached a threshold where it could no longer remain unseen. Every uphill battle, every unanswered prayer, every night you survived without applause, none of it was wasted. It was all evidence being gathered. You stand here now, not as an intruder, but as the subject of deliberation, exactly where you're meant to be, exactly when you're meant to arrive. The court is in session, and your life is about to be read correctly. The court is in session, and now that your life is about to be read correctly, you finally see where you are standing. Because this place was never built in a moment. It was formed outside time, layered with intention, saturated with memory, older than your fear, and stronger than your doubt. What surrounds you isn't spectacle, it's order. Light doesn't shine here the way it does in the world you know. It listens, it waits, it responds. You feel it immediately, that sensation of being fully known, without being exposed, seen without being reduced. No masks survive in a room like this, yet nothing here seeks to shame you. The silence carries authority, not threat, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself because everything already obeys it. This is not a courtroom built to accuse. It's a courtroom built to remember. Ancient energies move through the space like breath, not hurried, not chaotic, but deliberate, as if every vibration knows exactly where it belongs. You realize then that this court has been active your entire life. You just weren't conscious of it. Every moment you thought went unnoticed, every decision made in private, every time you chose endurance over collapse when no one was watching, all of it happened under this gaze. That realization lands heavy, not because you're in danger, but because you are no longer invisible. You were taught to believe that only loud victories matter, that only public success leaves a record, that if no one claps, nothing counts. But here the metrics are different. Here integrity weighs more than outcome. Here survival carries more authority than performance. You sense the presence of witnesses, not as figures staring you down, but as forces aligned with truth itself. They do not argue, they do not debate, they observe. And what they observe is coherence. This court does not operate on chaos or favoritism. It does not elevate randomly. It responds to alignment, to the quiet consistency of a soul that refused to surrender its essence even while adapting to survive broken systems. That's why this feels both overwhelming and strangely familiar. Your nervous system remembers this order even if your conscious mind doesn't. Something in you recognizes the structure, the balance, the way. Nothing here is rushed or wasted. You are not on trial for your pain. You are not being questioned for your hesitation. Those things were already understood. The only thing being clarified now is context, because the world trained you to read your life as fragmentation. This court reads it as formation. What you called delay, this place calls timing. What you called rejection, this place calls protection. What you called confusion, this place recognizes as necessary disorientation before alignment. And suddenly the weight you've been carrying shifts. Not gone yet, but relabeled. You realize this authority never left you alone. It watched quietly, allowing your will to remain yours, letting you choose, letting you grow, letting you question. Free will was never absence of oversight. It was trust. That's why being here doesn't feel like being summoned to answer for your life. It feels like being summoned because your life finally has enough substance to be addressed. You belong in this room not because you were perfect, but because you were faithful to becoming. You stayed, you adapted, you endured without losing your core. And the court recognizes that. The atmosphere thickens now, not with tension, but with anticipation. Something is about to be open. Something recorded long before you were ready to look at it yourself. The space quiets further, as if preparing for testimony. Not against you, for you. That is why the silence sharpens, why the air seems to draw inward, why your attention is pulled towards something now moving at the center of the court. Because what was watching is about to speak. The record opens without sound. No drum roll, no announcement, just revelation. You sense it before you see it, a presence thick with memory, layered with time-holding weight your mind alone could never carry. This is not a book made of paper. It is a living ledger, responsive, exact. And the first thing you notice is this: nothing is missing. Every season you minimized, every chapter you rushed past because it hurt too much to linger, every version of you that didn't survive long enough to be named, all of it is here, not summarized, not edited, recorded. You always assumed only outcomes mattered, that wins were logged and losses erased, that silence meant absence. But the ledger tells a different story. It traces patterns instead of moments. It measures endurance instead of applause. Here is the night you almost quit. Here is the choice you made when no one would have known either way. Here is the strength you built in isolation, the restraint you learned through disappointment, the discernment forged by being misunderstood. And something shifts in you as you watch. Because the entries you labeled as failure are not marked that way here. They are annotated, contextualized, sealed as necessary. You see how resistance shaped capacity, how loss sharpened perception, how being delayed taught you how to carry weight without breaking. Nothing was random. Nothing was excessive. Even the moments you regret carry intention in this record, not because the pain was ordained, but because your response mattered more than the wound. You adapted, you learned, you stayed conscious when it would have been easier to harden. The ledger does not celebrate perfection. It documents alignment under pressure. And then you realize something unsettling and relieving all at once. Your life has been busy this entire time, working, accumulating, building credibility you couldn't yet feel. Every time you thought you were behind, the record shows acceleration happening beneath the surface. Every time you felt small, something foundational was being reinforced. Every time you questioned your worth, another line was written in your favor. You were never empty. You were being filled in ways visibility would have ruined too early. This is why comparison always felt off to you, why timelines never matched, why success that satisfied others felt hollow when you imagined it for yourself. You were on a different docket. The court wasn't preparing you for applause. It was preparing you for authority. As the ledger continues to unfold, you feel the old shame loosening its grip. Not because your past is erased, but because it finally has language that makes sense. Your story stops looking like a series of missteps and starts reading like a deliberate formation arc. And for the first time, you're not tempted to argue with the record. You can feel its accuracy in your body, in your breath, in the way your shoulders drop as truth replaces accusation. But something else is rising now, because a record this thorough does not exist without opposition, and the court is not finished speaking. The ledger pauses. The atmosphere tightens again. Another voice is about to be addressed. You feel it before it speaks, that familiar tightening in your chest, the reflex to brace the old instinct to defend yourself before an accusation is even formed. Because you know this voice. You've heard it for years. It doesn't come from outside. It rises from memory. Moments step forward now, not as shameful snapshots, but as witnesses. Events you tried to bury. Choices you replayed too many times. Paths that didn't lead where you hoped. They move into the center of the court, and for a split second you expect the weight to crush you. But something is different here. They don't accuse. They testify. What you called failure speaks first, and its voice is steady. It does not apologize for existing. It explains its function. It shows how it redirected you away from a future that would have hollowed you out, how it interrupted patterns that would have trapped you in approval-seeking cycles, how it forced you to slow down long enough to develop depth instead of speed. You see it clearly now. That door didn't close to punish you. It closed to protect what was forming. Another memory steps forward, one you labeled as wasted time. Years where nothing seemed to move, where effort felt invisible, where progress refused to announce itself. The court does not call it stagnation. It calls it incubation. Those seasons taught you how to listen instead of perform, how to endure without validation, how to remain intact when momentum disappeared. Skills applause could never teach. Even the choices you regret are allowed to speak. They do not deny the cost. They contextualize it. They show you the discernment that emerged afterward, the boundaries that hardened where naivety once lived, the compassion you gained for others navigating the same confusion. The pain was real, but it wasn't pointless. This is where your internal narrative collapses. Because you were taught to read your life linearly, mistake, consequence, loss. The court reads it dimensionally, pressure, response, capacity. What felt like derailment was often refinement. What felt like falling behind was often being repositioned. What felt like weakness was frequently sensitivity being preserved in a world that would have crushed it too early. You realize now that your failures never removed you from alignment. They clarified it. That's why you survived them with your core intact. Others broke in similar circumstances. Others hardened. Others lost themselves chasing relief. You didn't. You adapted without disappearing. This is not self-congratulation. This is accuracy. The court does not romanticize your suffering. It assigns meaning to your response. You were not chosen because you struggled. You were revealed through how you carried struggle without letting it define you. And here's the part that changes everything. Those moments you thought disqualified you are now standing as credentials. They speak with authority because they were lived, not theorized. They give weight to your insight, depth to your voice, gravity to your presence. You were being trained to recognize truth under distortion, to see clearly in systems designed to confuse, to lead without becoming loud, to hold space without needing control. That kind of formation doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in ambiguity, resistance, and unanswered questions. The court acknowledges this without drama, without exaggeration, just clarity. Your past stops arguing with your future here. They align. And as the last of these witnesses step back, something inside you settles. Not pride, grounding. You no longer feel the need to defend your timeline. You no longer need to explain why it took so long. The explanation has already been entered into record. But the court is not finished, because there is still one presence that has not spoken yet, the voice that tried to use these same memories against you, the one that twisted context into condemnation. It is about to be exposed. The court does not rush this moment, it never does. Because this voice has been loud for a long time, and false authority must be dismantled carefully, not dramatically, or it simply regroups in another form. You feel the shift as soon as it's acknowledged. A pressure behind the eyes, a tightening in the throat, the familiar sensation of being evaluated from the inside. This is the prosecution you've lived with, not a demon, not an enemy from outside, but a voice built from repetition, survival, and misinterpretation. A composite of things said to you, things you assumed, and conclusions you drew while trying to stay safe. It steps forward now, confident at first. It recites your history the way it always has. Selective, out of context, heavy on outcome, light on intention. It points to moments of hesitation, to times you didn't act sooner. Speak louder, become more. It frames caution as cowardice, sensitivity as weakness, patience as delay. This voice knows your patterns because it studied you while you were tired, but the court does not interrupt it. That's what unsettles you most. It lets the accusations run their course. Every familiar phrase, every internal eye roll, every quiet verdict you've passed on yourself in moments of exhaustion. And then the court does something devastatingly simple. It asks for evidence, not emotion, not interpretation, evidence. The accusations begin to unravel immediately. Because this voice never recorded your resilience, it never logged the nights you stayed when escape was easier. It never accounted for the restraint you practiced when retaliation was justified. It never acknowledged the discernment that told you when not to move. It mistook survival strategies for character flaws. The court cross-references the ledger, dates, patterns, responses under pressure, and suddenly the prosecution's certainty evaporates. Because what it called inconsistency was adaptation. What it called fear was awareness. What it called delay was timing, shaped by factors you were never given language for at the time. This voice is not evil. It's outdated. It formed when you needed armor, not clarity. When belonging required shrinking. When safety meant anticipation instead of presence. But it never updated its understanding as you grew. That's the revelation. Self-doubt wasn't trying to destroy you. It was trying to keep you alive using old data. The court doesn't punish it. It revokes its authority. You feel the difference instantly. The voice doesn't disappear. It quiets. Its volume drops because its jurisdiction has ended. It no longer gets to interpret your life. It no longer gets final say. It no longer frames your future using your past at its most confused. The court replaces it with something else. Not affirmation, accuracy. Truth speaks without urgency, without shame, without flattery. It names you as consistent where it mattered, aligned where it counted, aware long before you had language for why awareness felt heavy. You realize now that your self-criticism was never proof of unworthiness. It was proof of conscience without context. And conscience, when informed, becomes wisdom. The courtroom grows still again. The accuser steps back, not defeated but reclassified. A tool, not a judge. Your chest feels lighter but not euphoric. Grounded. Like something heavy was set down rather than ripped away. You are not suddenly fearless. You are suddenly clear. And clarity carries a different kind of weight. Because once false authority is removed, there is nothing left to argue with. No internal trial to replay, no verdict to outrun, only truth. The court is quiet now because there is nothing left to contest. All testimony has been heard, all accusations examined, all distortions corrected, which means the next thing that happens cannot be debated. It can only be declared. But before the declaration comes, the silence. Not the awkward kind, not the empty kind. This is the silence that follows truth when it has finished speaking and nothing remains to be corrected. You feel it spread through the court first, then through you. The pressure that lived in your chest loosens without announcement. Your breath deepens without instruction. Your body responds before your mind fully understands what has shifted. This is recalibration. For so long, your nervous system was trained to stay alert, to anticipate correction, to brace for judgment, even in neutral moments. That posture became familiar, heavy, normal. But now there is no accuser feeding it. The court does not rush to fill the space. It allows your system to adjust to a new baseline, one where vigilance is no longer mistaken for wisdom. You realize how much energy you spent maintaining internal arguments that no longer exist. Replaying conversations, preemptively justifying choices, explaining yourself to an audience that was never actually there. That labor ends here. Not because you are excused from responsibility, but because responsibility no longer carries condemnation. The silence teaches you something your words never could. Peace is not passivity. It is alignment without friction. You begin to feel the weight you carried recalibrating into something else, not disappearing, redistributing. Where there was tension, there is now readiness. Where there was shame, there is now memory without charge. Where there was urgency, there is now timing. The court holds this moment like a seal setting. You are not being hyped, you are being stabilized. This is why the relief feels quiet instead of explosive. Because what's leaving you isn't emotion, it's distortion. Your past still exists, your responsibilities remain, your future still carries cost, but none of it is fighting you anymore. You notice how your posture changes when you no longer feel the need to defend your existence, how your attention sharpens when it's not split between living and self-monitoring, how presence returns when internal surveillance shuts down. This is the energetic shift you've been waiting for without knowing how to name it. Not motivation, not confidence, coherence. The court recognizes when a soul is ready to receive a verdict, not because it wants relief, but because it can carry consequence. That's what this silence confirms. You are no longer reacting to who you were accused of being. You are available to respond to who you actually are. The recalibration completes without ceremony. The air feels different now, denser, intentional. Something irreversible has locked into place, and in this stillness you sense it. The declaration is no longer approaching, it is standing. The court does not rise, it does not need to. Authority does not posture. The verdict is spoken without volume, yet it carries more weight than anything you have ever heard shouted at you. It does not echo, it lands. Victory, not conditional, not postponed, not dependent on future performance. Already decreed. You feel it register in your body before your mind finishes interpreting the word. A release at the base of your spine, a steadiness behind your eyes, a quiet strength moving through your chest that does not ask permission to exist. This is not optimism, it is recognition. The court is not predicting what might happen. It is naming what has already been established through record, response, and alignment. The verdict does not create reality, it confirms it. Victory does not mean everything was fair. It means everything counted. Every burden you carried without becoming bitter. Every delay that taught you patience instead of resentment. Every time you chose integrity over relief when no one would have blamed you for collapsing. All of it weighed in, and the scales did not hesitate. You realize now why this moment could not arrive earlier. Because victory declared too soon becomes entitlement. Victory declared now becomes responsibility. The word moves through your history as it is spoken, relabeling memory without erasing it. Moments that once felt like proof of misalignment are repositioned as confirmation of endurance. Loss does not disappear, it integrates. You are not being told that you will win someday. You are being told that you were never losing in the way you were taught to believe. That realization carries a different kind of gravity, because if the verdict is already settled, then the way you move forward changes. You no longer chase validation. You no longer negotiate your worth. You no longer wait for permission to stand upright in who you are. The court does not celebrate, it seals. Victory is not an emotion here, it is a status. A status that cannot be appealed by old voices, old patterns, or old fears. They may still speak, but they no longer overrule. You feel the cost of this immediately, because victory removes excuses. You can no longer hide behind confusion. You can no longer pretend you are unseen. You can no longer live as if your presence doesn't matter. The verdict carries obligation to live in alignment with what has been recognized, to walk as someone whose life has been weighed and found coherent, to stop shrinking to fit rooms that were never designed to hold your full measure. The court does not tell you what to build. It tells you who you are while you build. Victorious does not mean untouched. It means entrusted. The declaration completes and nothing rushes in to replace it. No applause, no instruction. Just the quiet understanding that something fundamental has changed. You are no longer trying to become worthy. You are learning how to live as someone already recognized. And that is a heavier crown than you imagined. Because now your reign does not begin in fantasy, it begins in practice. Not with spectacle, not with sudden elevation, but with the subtle, unsettling realization that you can no longer live the way you used to. Because when a verdict governs identity, it rewires behavior. You notice it first in small moments. How you enter rooms, how long you tolerate misalignment, how quickly you recognize when something asks you to abandon yourself for belonging. Victory does not make you louder, it makes you clearer. You stop explaining your intuition to people who benefit from you doubting it. You stop chasing environments that require you to fracture to stay. You stop confusing endurance with destiny. This is the embodiment shift. The verdict doesn't demand perfection, it demands congruence. You begin to move differently because you are no longer negotiating your right to exist in your own life. Decisions sharpen, energy consolidates. What once felt draining now simply feels unnecessary. You start honoring your capacity instead of resenting it, honoring your sensitivity instead of trying to outgrow it, honoring your pace instead of apologizing for it. These are not affirmations, they are adjustments. You realize how often you used to betray small truths to maintain temporary peace. How often you stayed silent when clarity was present but costly. Victory makes that dissonance unbearable. Because once alignment is recognized, misalignment becomes loud. This is where responsibility deepens. You are no longer allowed to pretend you don't know what you know. You are no longer free to numb what your awareness registers. You are no longer permitted to shrink your life to make others comfortable with your restraint. The verdict doesn't inflate your ego. It strips your excuses. You begin to feel the ripple of this embodiment beyond you. People respond differently when you stop asking for permission energetically. Some lean in, some resist, some quietly benefit without ever naming why your presence feels stabilizing. That's the effect of someone who has stopped arguing with their own worth. Your actions carry less force and more weight. Your words land without needing repetition. Your boundaries hold without aggression. You are not trying to be influential. You are becoming reliable. The verdict reorganizes your priorities too. What once felt urgent fades. What once felt distant moves closer. You invest less in performance and more in alignment because alignment now feels non-negotiable. And this is where the fantasy of victory dissolves. Because victory lived out is not glamorous. It is consistent. It is embodied in choices no one claps for. It is expressed in what you refuse to participate in as much as what you pursue. You feel the weight of it now. This is not about manifesting outcomes. It is about maintaining coherence. And coherence costs you something. You begin to sense it coming, that next threshold. The one most people turn back from once they realize what victory actually requires. Because to live under this verdict means something must be surrendered, not later. Now, this is where most stories soften, where language becomes inspirational instead of honest. But the court does not retreat into comfort, and neither can you. Because victory has a cost and it is not abstract. The moment you stop hiding, life responds differently to you. Not always kindly, not always gently, but clearly. You begin to feel it almost immediately, that quiet loss of anonymity. You can no longer blend in without consequence. You can no longer claim ignorance when alignment is available. You can no longer pretend your presence doesn't shift the atmosphere in rooms you enter. This is the price of coherence. When you live below your measure, you could disappear when things became uncomfortable. You could blame timing, you could blame confusion, you could blame circumstance. Victory removes those exits, not as punishment, as precision. You are seen now not because you are famous, but because you are legible. Your integrity reads clearly. Your hesitation reads clearly. Your avoidance reads clearly. This is where responsibility stops being theoretical. You feel the weight of choice sharpen. What you say yes to now builds something. What you say no to now protects something. Neutrality fades because alignment demands direction. Some relationships strain under this shift. Not because you became arrogant, but because you stopped collapsing yourself to maintain symmetry with people who never planned to grow with you. You are not abandoning them. You are refusing to abandon yourself. And that distinction matters. The court never promised you comfort. It confirmed your capacity. You will be misunderstood at this level, not because you are unclear, but because clarity disrupts systems built on ambiguity. Your refusal to participate in distortion will feel like judgment to those who rely on it. This is part of the cost. You will feel moments of loneliness that are not remedied by crowds. Moments where you wish you could return to the simplicity of being unnoticed. Moments where the weight of awareness feels heavier than ignorance ever did. But listen carefully. Those moments are not signs of misalignment. They are signs of transition. You are moving from survival-based belonging into responsibility-based presence, from being shaped by environments into shaping them. And shaping always costs more than fitting in. The court does not apologize for this. It does not negotiate it, because the alternative is worse. To know what you know and live as if you don't fractures the soul. To carry capacity and refuse responsibility corrodes from the inside. Victory is not a reward. It is an assignment to live awake, to choose with awareness, to let your life mean something beyond self-protection. You feel the finality of this now. There is no returning to the version of you who was waiting to be chosen. No comfort in pretending you are still unseen. No refuge in half alignment. The choice has already been made by the verdict. All that remains is whether you will live as if it is true. The court grows still again, not because it is finished with you, but because what comes next cannot be decided there. It must be lived. And this is where the court releases you, not because its authority ends, but because its purpose has been fulfilled. What was decided there must now echo here. You begin to understand something quietly profound. This verdict was never meant to terminate with you. Your alignment alters the field around you, not through persuasion, not through performance, but through coherence that others can feel before they can name it. People sense when someone has stopped negotiating their existence. They feel it in conversations that suddenly deepen, in silence that feels safe instead of awkward, in presence that stabilizes without trying to lead. This is the ripple. Your life becomes evidence, not because you preach, not because you announce what you've seen, but because your responses no longer match the scripts people expect. You don't react where reaction used to be automatic. You don't shrink where shrinking once kept the peace. You don't chase affirmation where truth is already sufficient. That difference registers. Others begin to recognize parts of themselves around you that they were taught to dismiss. Their intuition sharpens. Their questions surface. Their internal trials begin to crack open simply by proximity. This is not influence as the world defines it. This is permission. Your coherence gives others a reference point, a living example that survival does not have to harden into bitterness, that awareness does not require isolation, that responsibility does not erase tenderness. You become a witness without trying to be one. And this is where responsibility completes its arc. Because now your choices are no longer neutral. They either reinforce distortion or invite remembrance. They either uphold systems that thrive on disconnection or quietly undermine them by refusing to participate. You are not tasked with saving anyone. You are tasked with not betraying what you know. That alone is enough to shift trajectories. The court understood this from the beginning, that a verdict declared in one life can echo through many, not through force, but through fidelity. You realize now why your formation was solitary at times, why applause was withheld, why your path resisted shortcuts. You were not being isolated. You were being refined into something others could trust without knowing why. This is the final consequence of victory. You do not walk away crowned in fantasy. You walk forward anchored in responsibility. Your life becomes a quiet signal, a stabilizing presence, a living record that alignment is possible without erasure. And though the court is no longer visible, its decree remains active, not hovering over you, moving through you. Victory was never the end of your story. It was the moment your story became useful. Chosen one. Breathe here. The court is quiet now, not because its power faded, but because it no longer needs to speak loudly to be obeyed. What was declared there has already followed you out. It settled into your posture, into the way your breath moves, into the choices waiting for you when no one is watching. You don't need to rehearse the verdict anymore. You don't need to replay the words. They are already working through you, like gravity, like memory, returning to the body after a long exile. This is how victory actually integrates, not as excitement, not as urgency, but as a steady permission to stop performing survival. You may notice how silence feels different now, less threatening, more spacious, as if it finally belongs to you instead of reminding you of what's missing. That's the echo of alignment. You are not leaving this moment with instructions carved in stone. You are leaving with discernment sharpened enough to recognize what is yours to carry and what was never meant to stay on your back. The court did not hand you a script. It handed you coherence, and coherence will guide you better than certainty ever could. There will be days when the weight of responsibility returns in unfamiliar ways. Days when old habits knock quietly, asking if they can resume their post. Days when doubt tries to rebrand itself as humility. When that happens, remember this. You do not need to argue with voices that have already been stripped of authority. You do not need to revisit trials that have already been sealed. You do not need to shrink just to prove you're still kind. Kindness rooted in self-erasure is not kindness. It is delay. You are allowed to take up space now without apology. Not loudly, not forcefully, but truthfully. Your presence doesn't need to convince. It needs to remain intact. And if you ever wonder whether this was real, whether the shift you felt was imagined, whether the verdict truly applies when life becomes ordinary again, look at how you respond when pressure returns. Notice how you no longer collapse inward. Notice how you pause instead of panic. Notice how you choose alignment even when no one is rewarding you for it. That is the evidence still being written. Victory did not exempt you from difficulty. It exempted you from meaninglessness. Everything you face now has context. Everything you endure now contributes. Even the quiet days, Even the ambiguous ones, even the moments where progress feels invisible again. You are no longer building credibility. You are exercising it. And there is a difference. You don't need to announce who you are becoming. You don't need to prove that you were chosen. Lives shaped by coherence reveal themselves naturally the way truth does when it no longer has competition. Walk forward gently. Responsibility does not require hardness. It requires presence. Stand where you are without scanning for exits. Speak when alignment asks you to. Rest when your body signals completion instead of guilt. This is not the end of the story. It is the settling of the foundation. The verdict remains active, not because you remember it perfectly, but because it has already been integrated into how you move through the world. You were never meant to stay in the courtroom forever. You were meant to live as someone who has been correctly seen. And now you are. Carry that quietly. Carry it faithfully. Carry it without spectacle. That is how the echo continues.